Welcome to Outside Views. Today we continue our deep dive into what it would actually mean for the United Kingdom to apply for EU membership again. This is not a rejoin. There is no automatic way back. There's only the accession process. And as we have discussed before, this process is the same for every country that applies. Today we will examine one of the many chapters a candidate must align with before it can even be considered for accession. And the chapter we are discussing today is the chapter on statistics. At first glance, this might seem like a purely technical requirement. However, as with everything in the EU accession process, it is much more complex than it appears. Statistics are not just about numbers. They are about trust, transparency, and governance. They form the backbone of evidence-based policymaking, and they are crucial for the functioning of the EU as a single market. The European statistical system is designed to ensure that all member states collect and process data in a harmonized and reliable way. And this is essential for economic planning, social policies, and the enforcement of EU regulations. The rules for statistical reporting are not optional. They are binding, and they require a strong and independent national statistical institute that adheres to strict principles, including impartiality, reliability, transparency, and confidentiality. The UK has had a statistical system that was fully aligned with EU standards before Brexit. But since leaving, things have changed. The Office for National Statistics and other statistical bodies in the UK still follow many of the same methodologies, but there is no obligation anymore to align with the European acquis. And this means that the UK does not have to collect and submit data according to EU classifications and can set its own rules on what to measure and how to measure it. And this divergence may not be obvious in everyday life, but it becomes a significant obstacle when applying for EU membership. The EU needs comparable and consistent data from all its members to make informed decisions on economic policies, regional development, environmental protection, and many other areas. If the UK were to apply for membership, it would need to ensure that its statistical infrastructure fully complies with the acquis. This is not a matter of negotiation, it's a requirement. The UK cannot pick and choose which parts of the EU statistical regulations it wants to follow. It must adopt them entirely. And this is where we see the difference between what some might call negotiations and what this process actually is, despite the name. It's not a negotiation in the sense of two parties bargaining over a deal. It's an accession process where the applicant must align itself with the rules. And these rules are not up for debate. They must be accepted. The UK would need to reintegrate itself into the European statistical system. This would require not just policy changes, but also legal and institutional adjustments. The independence of the Office for National Statistics would have to be reinforced to match EU standards. Statistical reporting would need to be expanded to cover areas where divergence has occurred. And all data collection methods would need to be reviewed to ensure full compliance with EU classifications. The UK's exit from the EU has led to gaps in statistical reporting between the UK and the EU. And trade statistics are one of the most prominent examples. Since Brexit, the UK does not provide the same level of detailed trade data to Eurostat as it did before, and this makes economic comparisons more difficult and affects EU decision-making. A future application for membership would mean that the UK must restore the reporting mechanisms in full. This would also mean reinstating the obligation to report on various economic indicators that are not currently aligned with EU requirements. The implications go beyond mere technical adjustments. Reliable statistical data is crucial for monitoring economic convergence, and that is one of the Copenhagen criteria. because a candidate country must demonstrate that it has a functioning market economy and the ability to cope with the competitive pressure within the EU. And this cannot be assessed without comprehensive, comparable, and trustworthy statistics. The EU must be able to rely on the data provided by a candidate country. If there are concerns over reliability or transparency or political interference in statistical reporting, this would be a major red flag in the accession process. For the UK, this means that re-establishing full compliance with EU statistical regulations is not just a mere formality. It's a fundamental requirement. The UK might argue that it already has a high-quality statistical system, and that is true, to an extent. But having a strong system is not the same as having an EU compliance system. The rules must be followed exactly as required. No opt-outs, no special arrangements, no exceptions, and, to understand it, no cherry-picking. Some may argue that this chapter should be easy to complete given the UK's previous alignment with EU standards. However, the reality is more complicated than that. After years of divergence, reintegration would take time and effort. There would be legal changes, institutional reforms, and significant investments needed to ensure full compliance. And as with all chapters of the acquis, the UK would need to prove that these changes are permanent and fully implemented before moving to the next stage of the process. Every aspect of data collection, categorization, and publication would have to be scrutinized. Regulations on statistical classifications such as NACE for economic activities or COICOP for consumer expenditure would have to be restored in the UK system. Agricultural statistics would need significant updates to align with the EU's common agricultural policy requirements. Trade classifications, foreign investment reporting, and research and development statistics would all have to meet the stringent EU standards. Beyond this chapter, the UK would also need to prove compliance with the other 34 chapters of the accession process. That's why I'm doing the series. Each chapter requires rigorous alignment and verification by the European Commission. Failure in any single area can halt the process entirely. And this is why the process is so lengthy and why many countries remain candidates for years, if not decades. The Copenhagen criteria lay out the foundation of these requirements. Beyond economic stability and statistical compliance, the UK must also demonstrate adherence to democratic principles, rule of law, human rights protections, and institutional stability. The EU will not accept a candidate that does not meet these fundamental principles, regardless of economic alignment. And joining the EU again is not just a technical exercise. It is a complete institutional transformation. For the UK, this would require reversing many of the legal and administrative changes made post-Brexit. It would demand a commitment to long-term European integration without the opt-outs and special arrangements the UK previously enjoyed. It would require sustained political will, but also economic investment and legal overhaul. Even statistics, something as seemingly straightforward as data collection, exemplifies the depth of this challenge. And this is why no country can just rejoin the EU as a mere formality. It's always a rigorous, structured process where compliance is the only path forward. The road to EU membership is long and demanding. There are no shortcuts. There are no special deals. Only the process. So thank you for watching Outside Views. And if you found this analysis useful, don't forget to like and subscribe. And let me know in the comments what you think about this aspect of a potential UK application. See you in the next video, and one of them is right here in the end screen.